Ladies and gentlemen, 50th episode of the Freemium podcast. Woo! Yeah. I didn't think we'd make it to 50. Did you think we'd make it to 50? I knew we were going to make it to 50. So today we got on the podcast a dear old friend of mine. It's been like 10 years since we've seen each other, Mr. Philippe Veilleux, one of the owners at Restaurant La Tanière in Quebec City. Did I say that properly?
Yeah.
Okay,
no,
good. Thank you very much for joining us today. And we're going to get into all things. We got a couple topics, but like I said, a lot of times these conversations end up taking a life of their own.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of the viewers know I used to work in the restaurant industry, the bar industry for like 5 years, all when I was younger. So we're going to be able to relate to a lot of stuff.
Definitely.
And it was actually the guy we had on last week, and we were talking about how much working in the restaurant helped him. It helps you come out of your shell, I find, like later on in life. It helps you become a better salesperson. It helps you being more comfortable speaking to people, at least that in my experience, it was like that. But thank you very much for coming onto the podcast today.
It's a pleasure, man. Thanks for having me.
How's so you live in Quebec City? How's
it's good.
How's life treating you right now?
Honestly, change of pace. When I first moved, it was a bit of an adjustment. You know, especially that I was living in the downtown core in Montreal before taking off. So
where were you living in Montreal?
I was in the southwest in Verdun.
In Verdun, okay.
But I was on the plateau before that.
Okay.
So I kind of moved around a little bit, and I was working at Maison Boulud in the Ritz-Carlton. So 4 nights a week, making a good amount of money, not working too hard.
Yeah.
And
did you live near Mark Vanda in Verdun? Because I think back in the day he used to live. He was living in Verdun.
Potentially.
Yeah.
Potentially.
Okay.
I don't remember exactly where he was situated, but I was on de Verdun there.
Okay.
Basically, right before the tunnel.
Okay.
To Atwater.
And how? Because I was literally thinking about this, and I want to save it for the podcast. How do we know each other? Is it through? I know you grew up in Timberlea. Is it through I think it's through the Charlemagne boys.
It might have been the Charlemagne boys. It might have been Cheech as well.
Cheech, okay.
Yeah. And
what's he up to these days?
Cheech, actually, I saw him this weekend.
Shut up.
Yeah.
How's he doing?
He was at the wedding.
Okay.
He's doing good. He lives in Northwest Territories.
No way.
Yeah.
What's he doing?
He's a pilot.
I did know that.
Yeah.
I did know that.
He was a welder for a while, but it was getting to his lungs. So he decided to go through pilot school, and now he does 19 passengers from Yukon to various locations. He was showing me pictures. It's crazy there.
I always liked Cheech.
Oh yeah, he's a nice guy.
Yeah. Wasn't he? He was living in Alberta for a bit, I think. No.
Yeah. Well, his girlfriend's from Calgary.
Okay.
And I think Markel's out there as well.
Yeah.
So they've built their own little lifestyle out there.
Markel's in Alberta, or is in Northwest Territories?
I think he's in Alberta.
He's in
I think
Alberta.
He has a construction company in Calgary, if I'm not mistaken. So.
We actually, Markel, back in the day, we ended up like making friends after. I got into a fight with him like way back in the day.
I feel like I've heard that story before from somebody else as well.
No, it was like, what was the story? So I remember we were at Clyde's at the time. I forget exactly how it broke out, but we ended up. I used to get into my fair share of fights, and he used to fight all the time too. I think it was as stupid as we bumped into each other accidentally, and we both said "fuck you," and then he said "fuck you," and then we just started fighting. Yeah. And then some of my buddies were, and some of his buddies, so it ended up being like a pile on and stuff. But it's I find always like when you actually get into a fight, because it was a fight over nothing. Yeah. And then like 2 weeks later, we were chill with each other.
Yeah, everything. So it smooths things out. It's just the egos that are going at each other.
Well, I find it almost gets like the respect starts, because he's like, because he was a big guy, and kind of, so I fought him, and we had it didn't even go as far to like see who won. It was probably like 10 seconds, and then everyone piled in. But
one of those.
Yeah. So talk to me about Restaurant La Tanière, and let me know and explain to us how you actually got started in this. So just to give like a little backdrop, because you're from Montreal.
Yeah, from Montreal.
From the West Island.
I'm from the West Island. I went to Collège Saint-Anne in Lachine, and the usual John Abbott Country Club.
Yeah.
And
I love John Abbott.
Yeah, it was a fun time.
That was a fun time. That was a very fun time. Yeah.
But worked in restaurants from a very young age. My first job was as a dishwasher at Kelsey's next to the Collie.
Okay, jeez, nice.
Which is now a REM station.
Yeah. Yeah.
And kind of gravitated in that industry throughout all of my schooling. I was a busboy at Steak Frites, moved up to waiter, did Bâton Rouge. And essentially, when I finished Abbott, I applied in restaurant management at ITHQ and at Concordia in Psych. Got accepted to both and was kind of faced with a decision. What do I want to do? And kind of just went for it. I remember at the time, I don't know if you know Mathieu Masson, who has Jellyfish downtown.
I know Jellyfish. I don't know the owner, though.
He was
great restaurant, very good restaurant.
Yeah, chef owner for 10 years. He just moved to Jamaica. He just announced it like last month.
Wow.
And he's one of the people that kind of inspired me because I always remember coming home from high school in Lachine on the bus and conversing with him and whatnot, and he was really passionate about it. And I don't know, I guess I kind of just got the bug.
Okay. Is he older than you?
He was 1 year older than me.
Okay. And you're 35?
I'm 32 going on 33 now.
Okay, so you're a little younger than me. I'm 35.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So, that kind of got me thinking, got me considering it, and I decided to go to ITHQ in restaurant management.
Okay.
And then the program itself kind of forces you to stage, to develop your competencies in all aspects. I cooked, I managed, I bartended, I served.
You've done it all.
I've basically done every single position in a restaurant. And
like, what's your favorite position out of all of those, considering you've done all of them?
I guess my most natural position is behind the bar.
Okay.
I guess it's probably because it's the intersection between the kitchen and service.
Yeah.
You do some sort of creation. There is room for, letting yourself kind of go and express yourself within, classic cocktail sort of canvases.
Yeah.
It's efficient. You get the contact with the customer. Often people that sit at bars are also a little bit more on the outgoing, interested side of things. So it's always been kind of where I felt most comfortable.
Okay.
I did enjoy cooking quite a bit, though. I think it was at the time what gravitated me more towards the dining room was the salary. That kind of the gap was just too big between being in the kitchen and in the dining room.
Like meaning the dining room, they make more money than in the kitchen.
Yeah, generally speaking, it's something that we're trying to correct as much as we can. At the end of the day, an employee who earns tip, and it was part of a tipping pot, you could say, if you do pot tip, it belongs to them. Yeah. So the decision at the end of the day comes down to if they want to share their tips or not.
Yeah.
But then it's all about just building the right culture and a collaborative mindset so that, they tip out the kitchen and it creates more of a cohesive environment.
Do you guys at La Tanière, do you pool all the tips, or does each person get to keep their tips and it's just like a percentage of their sales that they have to tip back to the busboy or the kitchen?
It's pool tip.
It's all pool tips?
In all of our restaurants.
So it's like, and I always find, because it's like one of two ways. Some restaurants are pool tips. Personally, I never liked pool tips because I would work my ass off and I didn't like, and again, it depends on the type of person that you are. So, but I was like one of the waiters, I would work my ass off. And I wanted to keep my tips for myself. I would still tip out the busboys. I would still tip out the kitchen, but it was more in my control. And I worked at another place too where there was pool tips, and I didn't like it because I felt I always got shortchanged. But again, it like depends on each person. Actually, my partner today, so Adam Strumis, how we first met was he was my busboy at Ewald Orchard. Okay. And I would always be like, "Hey, Strumis, come here." I go, okay, I'm going to watch my section and I'm going to tip you out more. So I would always tip him out like crazy, more than any other waiter would. So he would always watch my section like a hawk, which would allow me to turn over the tables quicker, which would allow me to give a better service to the clients, which would allow me to make more money. I would share in it with him. And that's kind of how we got started. Yeah. And then like a couple of months later, after like once I was already working in insurance, I'm like, hey, what are you doing now? And he was studying history at school. I'm like, are you going to be a teacher? He goes, no. So I'm like, so what are you going to do with your degree? He's like, nothing. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm like, do you want to come work in insurance?
Yeah.
And because we had worked so well together in the restaurant, we still work together today. So.
Well, it's usually where those dynamics are created.
Yeah.
But I can understand the whole wanting to work for yourself.
Yeah.
But it's not really the culture or the type of product or service that we're putting forth. You know, we're in the fine dining atmosphere where it's all about teamwork. There's so many different individuals that touch the table throughout the evening. It would be unthinkable for me to have everyone be at their own pocket, especially that, you know, the way that we function is it's very fluid. It's very the boundaries aren't too defined. You know, people have sections, but everyone helps each other out, and it just creates a better experience for the customer, in my opinion. You know, if
so
there's a reticence,
move, like you want to move so in other words, you're basically saying the pool tips help your business move more as a unit, as opposed to more individualistic.
Absolutely. And even if you come back to the kitchen front of house debate, you know, if the kitchen's getting tipped out on a huge bill, well, then if, you know, you come in and you ask to extend the hours a little bit, you know, can you stay back for an extra half hour, shuck some oysters,
no problem,
prepare a few appies. The guy has freaking $5K in wine bottles on the table. You're touching a bit of that. So it allows for, you know, an easier exchange, and for them to be a little bit more comprehensive of the situation. So
it's kind of it's the saying, show me the incentive and I'll show you the result.
Exactly.
So if they're incentivized to make more money, they'll most likely stay around for a little extra time if they're going to get a share in that pot.
Definitely.
Makes sense. What would you say at Restaurant La Tanière? What would you say? Because I've never been there. I've only been to Quebec City like twice in my life. I'm a bad Quebecer. I should have been there a few more times.
You're due.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Next time I come, though, I'll definitely come by the restaurant.
Please,
absolutely.
Please.
And but like, what would you compare it? What restaurant in Montreal? I know there's a lot of restaurants in Montreal. But if you could kind of offer us a comparison with regards to the experience and the type of dining that it is, what would you compare it to here in Montreal?
That's a tough one because we want to be completely singular in what we have to offer. And a lot of the feedback that we get is that there's nothing like us.
And I just want to also, for the people out there, 468 reviews, over 450 reviews, and it's a 4.9 out of 5 stars.
Yeah. Well, we're more in the comparison game with international tables.
Okay.
We want, when we first opened, our objective was to eventually crack the world's 50 best of San Pellegrino. Okay. To bring the Michelin guide to Quebec, and really be the top tier address, not only in Quebec but maybe even in Canada. We even actually, when we were doing the construction, we hid 3 bottles of champagne in one of the stone walls in the bathroom, and we said, if we do crack the world's 50 best, we're gonna break open the wall and drink the champagne. So we're waiting on that one. But that being said, if I had to compare, you know, the level of cuisine, if you think of places like Le Mousseau or Cabaret d'Enfer, the guys from Menu Extra, those are all, you know. Are
these Quebec City restaurants?
These are addresses in Montreal.
Okay, I don't know any
you
of these.
See?
I guess I gotta brush up on my restaurant info.
Obviously, we want to be part of the conversation with the institutions like Europea and Toki and whatnot. But we kind of have the advantage of being in Quebec City, which has a lot of historical referencing, a lot of heritage, a proximity to producers that's unrivaled. And we're in a building that dates from 1686 in vaulted cellars that are original, where it was 3 merchants that owned the 3 houses that have been kind of connected, and they used to store their furs and their sugar cane, and they used to work for La Compagnie du Nord, which eventually became the Hudson Bay Company.
Yeah. Isn't that the oldest company in North America?
I believe so, or one of.
Yeah.
Exactly. So there's a lot of history just in where we're situated, and we use it to our advantage. We integrate it into the experience. There's a lot of storytelling, and it's very producer-centric. Dishes tend to really put forward a certain individual or a certain area. There's a lot of themes. You move twice throughout the evening into different ambiances. Roughly 15-course tasting menu, fixed tasting menu for everyone, with 3 tiers of wine pairings that are offered. So it's,
it's an experience.
We don't shy away from the fact that we want to be the best. We really want to excel in what we do, and we are trying to really just create an environment that allows us to push the boundaries as much as possible. And so far, feedback is there, and our chef François Emmanuel, who I went to culinary school with, that's kind of the in that I got into this project. He was my roommate back when we were at ITHQ.
Okay.
He was nominated chef de l'année for the Laurier de la Gastronomie, which is an initiative that's been going on for 5 years now, where it's for the industry, by the industry. Essentially, Christine Plante put forward this gala where industry folk vote for sommelier, best service, best chef, restaurant of the year, and they go outside of just restaurants. The producer, supplier, event of the year. So it really puts a whole highlight on the hospitality industry. And we had the good fortune of being nominated and of winning Best Chef. François Emmanuel did. And then this year we're nominated for Best Service, Best Mixologist, and Restaurant of the Year as well.
Are you the mixologist?
No. I've learned to delegate.
Okay. Okay. And how long ago did this restaurant open up?
Well, La Tanière is an entity in Quebec City that's existed for a very long time.
Okay.
It was at a different address in the Rang Saint-Ange in the Saint-Augustin area, which is about 45 minutes out from the downtown core.
Yeah.
And it existed from 1977 to 2015 at this address, with 2 different owners. Laurier Terrien was the initial founder.
Okay.
He also founded Gibier Canabec, which is one of the biggest game suppliers in the province.
Okay.
And kind of pioneered Quebec cuisine, wild game, and it kind of had a hunting and fishing cabin sort of identity when it first opened.
What's his name?
Laurier Terrien.
Laurier Terrien.
And essentially, 2 of my business partners, Fred and Karen, purchased the restaurant from Laurier, Laurier being Karen's uncle.
Okay.
They purchased in 2002.
Okay.
And they brought it from this kind of hunting and fishing cabin identity all the way to 10, 15, 20-course tasting menus, molecular gastronomy, back when Alinea and El Bulli were all in that kind of genre as well. They got 4 diamonds. They got 5 diamonds from the CA rating system, and we're part of the conversation as one of the better tables in the province. And when I was in culinary school, I actually went to eat there, and I remember conversing with the people that were with me that night, and we were all looking at each other and kind of saying, all right, well, the bar is here, in Quebec gastronomy. Mm-hmm. And then 5 years later, I'm being approached to become a partner in that sort of entity, and it kind of came full circle for me. So all that being said, they operated from 1977 to 2015 at this other address. They opened Legend as well, which is in the downtown core on St. Paul Street, in 2014. And they kind of noticed that, most of the revenue was coming from the downtown location, when most of their time was being spent at the original location, which, 10, 15, 20 course tasting menus is super labor intensive. It's
I'm sure.
super, it's super hard on just organizational, the hours, the level of focus that you need.
A lot of cleaning.
So they chose to close and relocate eventually.
Okay.
And I finished culinary school. So did my business partner, Frank. And he staged internationally. He actually went to, he got the big bursary at ITHQ, which is the Relais Chateau Grand Chef bursary, which is $30K to stage for a year around the world. You choose 3 Relais Chateau locations.
Where did he go?
He went to Key in Sydney with Pierre Gilmore. Then he went to Arzac in San Sebastian for Juan Marie Arzac, which was...
I have no idea where that is.
It's in Spain. It's been a 3 Michelin star top 50 restaurant for almost two decades.
Okay, when you're getting like Michelin stars, how does it work? Is it just like based on 5 or like I don't know anything about
the Michelin Guide is 1, 2, 3.
Okay.
CAA is diamonds. They do 1 to 5.
Okay.
Everyone always asks me the question, why are tire companies and you know, and the car companies taking care of evaluating restaurants?
Yeah.
It stems from they used to actually put roadmaps out where they would rate rest stops.
Really?
And it kind of just grew into the industry of evaluating restaurants.
CAA. Huh.
Yeah. So CAA,
I just assumed it was a completely different organization, but it's CAA. You're talking like l'assistance routière.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
CAA?
Yeah, that's CAA.
They rate restaurants.
AAA in the States. They rate restaurants.
Damn, these guys do it all.
Michelin Tires rates restaurants
as
well.
That's the same organization?
Yeah, well, obviously there's different branches.
But it's the same the same parent company.
Yeah.
I thought, wow. Okay, so Michelin, hold on. Michelin, the tire company, is related to Michelin Star that rates restaurants.
Yeah, exactly.
And CAA, the roadside assistance company, rates restaurants as well.
On the diamonds, essentially.
Which one's more prestigious, I guess? The Michelin?
Depends where you are, depends who you ask. But Michelin has kind of always been the coveted guide, but they've never come to Canada.
Okay.
Until 2022, where they finally released their first guide, but they only evaluated Toronto and Vancouver.
But wasn't there because there was like a kind of an article I was reading, I want to say a couple months ago, and so I don't know if this is because Montreal isn't a good enough food scene, or if it's because they just actually weren't interested in coming, because a lot of people or restaurants in Montreal are like, we don't need the Michelin rating. Is that like, do you have any?
That's a hot topic right now.
Yeah, let's talk about it. What's the scoop? Give us the gossip.
Essentially, Michelin won't come for free. There needs to be some sort of government lobbying for them to come and evaluate the territory. Like in anything,
they want money.
Money talks.
They want their money. Yeah.
So Toronto and Vancouver, they paid the price.
Do you know what that price is?
It varies from city to city, but it's several $100,000, if not million.
Wow. Okay. And that's for them just to come.
Yeah. Well, essentially, if I'm not mistaken, they built a head office in Toronto.
Okay.
Which was privately funded, and then you need to fork out several $100,000 a year over a 3-year period, if I'm not mistaken, for them to really evaluate the territory and release a guide. But the economic comeback from the tourism that it generates, it's worth the investment, and the hot topic in Quebec is because we've thrived and we've managed to make our name for ourselves internationally as a gastronomic city and as a destination, especially when Bourdain was around and he was doing Parts Unknown and whatnot,
with the Joe Beef,
Beef guys and whatnot. So it shined a huge spotlight on sort of our identity, which is a bit rebellious, which is a bit elbows on the table. We don't really adhere to these high-end fine dining sort of guidelines, and we do things our own way. So that's kind of where this sort of I guess, narrative you could say of we don't need the guide comes from. And like in anything, you bring in a new evaluating system, it's going to come and disrupt
the current system,
a
whatever
current
they have
system
left.
and a current status, especially. So it's the people who have something to lose are the ones that are already at the top,
and they're the ones that are going to fight tooth and nail for Michelin
to
or
not
CA
come.
to not come.
Exactly. CA has been implanted for a while.
Okay, so it's just Michelin here.
It's just Michelin that hasn't arrived.
Do you think it's going to arrive?
We're working really hard for them to come.
And is this, so when you're saying that the government or the city, municipality, whoever, are the people that need to fork it out for Michelin to come to the city or the province originally, do they then go back to the restaurants and say, hey, we forked out $1 million, for example, you have to pay us a bit of money if you are going to be Michelin rated? It's all on the dime
it's in the tourism budget. They're going to spend the money either way.
Okay, got it.
Whether they spend it on a production company making ads for Quebec tourism, or they spend it on the Michelin Guide, the money's going to get spent. It's part of the budget.
Got it.
And for the first time, restaurateurs actually have a say in where the money's going to be spent. And that's where it kind of doesn't make sense to me. Like, why are you guys against something that's going to shine a spotlight on our destination, attract a new branch of clientele, attract top tier tourism, because people who travel for the Michelin Guide, they have money, they spend. All that just because of your ego, because of your reticence, because of the past, because they shunned us for the past 20 years, and because of that you kind of just want to say, well, no, we don't need you.
Is there one guy or one group or one girl or whatever in particular that are actively fighting this tooth and nail? Or
well, I feel like the more we've advanced in this sort of narrative, they're sort of starting to warm up to it. I don't want to point fingers or name names at anybody, but it's definitely a big debate on the downsides of what the Michelin Guide could bring. Because
such as
it brings a lot of pressure. It brings a lot of performance anxiety to an industry that already has plenty of it.
But would it really bring more performance anxiety? I mean, there's nothing more. There's so much pressure on a head chef and other people too, like in a restaurant, but you can really see it. I remember when I used to work at Buonanotte, it's on the same level of what you guys are doing, but it was like a popular hotspot supper club right back in the day. It's not there anymore.
Yeah.
But I remember working there. I was 18 years old. And this is when, for Grand Prix weekend, and they had just renovated. So they just opened up a whole new section. It was more of like a club section, I guess. But I remember walking through the kitchen and to see the pressure that the head chef was under, because like that was the hot spot in Montreal at the time for the Grand Prix. And I remember seeing this busboy. He cut across the kitchen because there's like 15 busboys, and a lot of them, they're there for like a week and then they leave. So there's so many they don't know the rules. So he cut across where the head chef was. He was walking around. I swear to God, I've never heard a chef. He was yelling at him at the top of his lungs, swearing at him, completely out of line and over the top, in my opinion. But the point I'm just trying to make is they're already under a lot of pressure. So like, would Michelin really bring more pressure to them?
Well, the thing with Michelin is that they're one of the few guides that thoroughly evaluate and reevaluate, and they don't tell you when they're coming to evaluate. So you always have to be on point, and that kind of omnipresent.
But La Tanière is always on point, right?
We try to be, definitely.
Sorry, I cut you off. Go ahead.
No. So yeah, no, I think it's there's a lot of horror stories that have stemmed from the Michelin Guide in Europe. You take the example of Bernard Loiseau, who committed suicide because he thought he was going to lose a star. And after he took his own life, the guide came out like a week or two later, and he actually didn't lose the star. And that's just one example out of plenty that the pressure that the Michelin Guide can bring because of the culture that's around it, because of the prestige that comes with it. And ask any chef in the fine dining space, most of them will aspire to eventually have a star, if not 2, if not 3. And once you get that 3rd star, the hardest thing to do is to keep it. And sometimes the perspective of losing it is daunting and can create unneeded pressure in an industry that's already full of pressure.
It's like the UFC champion of whatever weight class. It's one thing to get there. It's a whole other thing to stay on top.
Exactly.
It's like when George St. Pierre used, it was basically one of my buddies. You know Dennis Beaudry?
I don't think so.
And he's one of my buddies. He's a West Island guy. He lives in Moose Creek. It's near Ottawa. He lives in the sticks. So, but he was a big UFC guy, and he put it perfectly. He goes, this is at the time when GSP was still a champ, and he said, like, it's up to, he's like, there's so much pressure because now he's won it so many times. And I was like, well, it's kind of a boring fight. He's like, no, that's not the way I look at it. It's like, basically he would be at the top and say, I'm the champ. You got to come and get it if you want to beat me. And he would always still win. But just, it was a very difficult, it's one thing to get to the top, and it's a whole completely different thing to stay at the top. And that's where you get to like the top tier athletes or top tier successful business people like a Michael Jordan and a Wayne Gretzky. Like these guys get to the top and stay at the top for that long. Because I feel like a lot of people, once they get to the top, they're like, oh, this is it. And they're like, they kind of lose their fire.
Their passion.
Yeah. I think I would be like that. I think if I got to something, or like if I was in, like, let's say I won the Stanley Cup, if I got it once, I'd be like, yeah, cool.
Yeah, I don't know.
Everyone's different though.
Everyone's different, but it has a lot to do with the process. If you want to get to that echelon and be one of the better tables in the city, in the province, in the country, it's about creating an environment that sustainable enough, and that's the culture is healthy enough that you can put forward your best foot on a daily basis. And that stems a lot from how we manage, from how we manage expectations, how we protect our staff, how we
protect how, like, from mean clients.
Well, we're fortunate enough that we don't get very many mean clients because generally speaking, the satisfaction is there. Yeah. But it's more about protecting them from themselves, from being overworked, from feeling too much pressure, trying to promote healthier lifestyles, because it's an industry that you can often fall into vice and go down the dark hole rather quickly. That's very true. I don't think there's an industry more than the hospitality industry where more people can fall down a dark hole. Oh, yeah. And it almost always involves alcohol, drugs, or gambling. Probably alcohol, or all drugs. Yeah, or all three. Usually they come hand in hand, which is it's pretty bad. Yeah. We've all seen it. I've seen it. I'm sure you've seen it. I still see it. It's not pretty. I still see it, and nobody's 100% foolproof. Yeah. It can definitely get at anybody. So we put in place measures. We have collective insurance, we have RSP matching, we have a gym on site to try and create advantages and an environment that can resemble maybe a bigger hotel or more of an institution-like business, but on a smaller scale, because we are independent restaurants nonetheless. And we don't have to do it, but we want to do it, and we feel like it makes a difference, and it helps retain. It helps. That was my next question. So based off all the things you probably just said, I was going to say your retention in comparison to the industry average is probably much higher. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like, people are looking at it as more of a, correct me if I'm wrong, are looking at it more as a career as opposed to I'm going to work here while I'm at school. 90 to 95% of our staff are that's their job. Restaurant workers. Huh. And, we offer opportunities to help them develop their skill set, whether it be paying for sommelier classes or for cooking classes, whether it be coordinating for staging internationally at different addresses that they wouldn't necessarily be able to get into on their own, but when they have a signed letter from us backing them, they can stage for a couple months at
so cool.
a restaurant across the country or even in Europe. And it definitely it helps to promote self-growth from within.
Do most of them come back? So let's say, for example, you were to sign a paper, or you were to basically just give what do they call it, like a recommendation letter to go on a stage in France or wherever. Do most of them end up coming back afterwards?
Yeah, and we also back ourselves in these types of situations. There,
got it.
Generally speaking,
if you're paying for it, it's like, well, you got to protect yourself.
At least stay back for a year after you come back. There, kind of deal.
It's kind of like we'll do the same thing. It's like we'll pay for all because to get your insurance, to get the permit, there's a cost to get it and stuff. So we'll protect ourselves certain ways. So it's like we'll pay for all of this, but. Yeah, if you pay for all this, you can't leave after a month. And if you do, you owe us some money.
Exactly.
So
it has to be win-win.
Yeah.
But I think all those factors kind of help to retain our staff. I have some staff that's been there since we opened, and several that have been there for 4 or 5 years, and that's less and less heard of in our industry.
Yeah, definitely.
So we're very fortunate in that regard.
Nice. Very nice. What's so you've been working there for 6 years, you said?
Yeah. Well, essentially, we elaborated the business plan and opened in July 2018.
Okay.
So November 2017 is when me and one of my other business partner, Roxanne, who's the dining room manager at La Tanière, whereas I'm more the dining room manager at Origine, our second entity.
Okay.
They're one on top of the other in the same building. So it's just, we contribute in all aspects in both restaurants, but at a certain point, you need to divide and conquer, and each individual needs their department.
Yep.
So in November 2017, we started spending our weekends going back and forth for 7-8 months. Every weekend, we didn't have weekend. We would just go develop the business plan and stay ready to bid on the space, because the space is government owned. It's a UNESCO protected site, so
so it's a heritage. You can't just go in and renovate it. Like it
doubled our cost of renovation.
Well, I'm sure because correct me if I'm wrong, because there's some buildings like this in Pointe-Claire as well. So we have some clients in the Pointe-Claire village, and as soon as it's like a bâtisse patrimoine, it's like the government they're the municipality. They get really involved in it because they want to keep the facade. They want to keep the character of the building, right? So you can't just. And from an insurance perspective for us, the cost goes way up too, because if there is a claim, it catches on fire, they want it to be rebuilt
all the specs
the same
have to
way.
Be the same. Yeah.
So you can't go to the Home Depot and get a bunch of wood.
No.
You have to get specifically what it was built with earlier, or as close to it as possible. So it does add a lot of costs. I'm sure it does.
Oh yeah. But
how much did you guys put into? You don't have to say the exact number, but it was I'm sure over $1 million into renovations.
Much more.
Holy shit!
Yeah.
And where are you getting this money to do that?
We have the good fortune of being surrounded by a lot of business people in Quebec City that have been long-term customers of La Tanière.
Got it.
That backed us privately.
Okay.
But sort of they would loan us money, and it would give them expense accounts in the restaurants. So it's an interesting way of financing.
Interesting. Yeah, very.
That's one aspect, and then I think we have 3 different banks that are involved.
Okay.
The SODEC, which is the owner of the building.
Okay.
C'est la Société de Développement Économique et Culturel du Québec.
Okay.
So it's a government sub-entity, and they own most of the area that we operate in. And they subsidize part of it. They also backed us financially with a bit of lending, and they're super accommodating when it comes to any difficulties that we may have with rent and whatnot, especially during COVID. It was not the easy an easy pass for anybody in our industry.
No.
So we have the good fortune of being surrounded by various business people,
partners that are willing to give you money.
Yeah, exactly.
So it sounds like it's very community oriented.
Well, in reality, I would recommend it to anybody who's opening a restaurant. You have prominent business people that have a vested interest, that have a sense of ownership, that bring the customers, and word of mouth, and it really created a good customer base and repeat business, and it's a good way of going about it, definitely.
Would you consider you guys like the top? Well, I know you will because you're going to be biased, but like in the eyes of someone who lives like in Quebec City, you're like a top 3 restaurant in Quebec City?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah?
Definitely.
I know you because you'll say you're number 1. So.
Well, TripAdvisor says we're number 1.
Okay, so that's an objective point of view. Okay.
That's the way I look at it. We even got last year we got the TripAdvisor Best of Best award, which is the top 1% in the world, if I'm not mistaken.
Wow.
If not Canada, but I'm pretty sure it's the world.
I feel like TripAdvisor is becoming more and more prestigious with regards to their ratings, because it's like
it's a love-hate relationship.
Yeah.
TripAdvisor.
So like, why?
Because if somebody decides to really dig into you and roast you, you're powerless. But it's also what kind of gives them their validity and protects them and kind of allows for their reputation to stay intact. But let's just say that when somebody is ill intent and wants to bring you down, well, there's not much you can do about it. You're kind of a victim to it. Whereas Google, there's a lot of different ways you can flag a comment. And
can you respond to comments on TripAdvisor?
Yeah, you can respond to comments everywhere, and it's important too.
Yeah, it's the same thing. I feel like people though too, if you're going through reviews, people know that. But I mean, especially if there's, let's say for example, you guys have 600 and whatever reviews, or if someone has 1,000 reviews, and if it's like a 4.7. I think people, at least myself, I know that there's going to be some idiots. I'm sure there's some people there that actually did have a bad experience for whatever reason. That definitely happens.
You can't be perfect 100% of the time. We strive to be, but
But I feel like sometimes that bad review almost even adds more validity to the score, just because of the fact that, like, if ever I see, I'll give you an example. I saw an insurance broker, I won't name their name, there's 1.2 thousand reviews, and it was like 4.9. And I'm just like, anyways, I'm like, what? I'm like, that's too
clean of a resume.
It's too clean. It's too clean. I'm like, And I had this other woman once. We have a lot of reviews and stuff, and we do the same thing. We respond to them, and we get bad reviews too, obviously.
Yeah.
And one lady calls up. She goes, "Yeah, you guys had really good reviews," and we're like, "Oh, thanks so much." And she goes, at the time we had 100-something reviews. She's like, "They can't all be fake." So, because sometimes people, when they open up a new like Google My Business, especially the first like 30, 40 reviews, it's usually the owner texting all their friends, and so it's a 5-star on 30, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, but no, generally speaking, we try and stimulate in-house. Okay. When you see someone's having a good time, they're not usually, it's not automatic that they want to go and leave a review. Most of the time, they don't. So you have to stimulate it. You have to mention it. You have to try and, get it out of them. And bad reviews, I've had customers come because of my responses to bad reviews.
Give us an example. Like where you would tell them to fuck off, kind of, or?
I have a way of being passive aggressive and putting people,
in their place.
In their place, and
give us an example.
Jeez, I'd have to pull it out here.
Because it's like, and while you're looking for that, because it's kind of the same thing. We had this guy. You're gonna get the bad reviews, and we had a guy.
Well, I had one at Origine where he was calling us racist, and that we were segregating people.
What?
Yeah. And not only that, but he chose to write it 4 years later. He came in 2019 and he posted it this year,
saying that you guys were racist.
Yeah. So I've been sitting on this review for a few years now, pondering about its impact and effects. At first, I wrote a Yelp review criticizing the restaurant for racist behavior, but then I removed the review in fears that maybe it wasn't in fact racism, but instead coincidence and misunderstanding. I've learned a lot about different forms of level of racism over the years, and that leads to me now to finally write this review. And he goes on to say that, because the way a Vision is made is we have 2 dining rooms.
Okay.
It's like a wing past the bar.
Okay.
And if I have no more room in the main dining room, I'm going to put you in the second dining room.
Okay.
And an Asian family walks in, no reservation.
Yeah.
To celebrate his wife's birthday. Right there. Like, why didn't you book a reservation to celebrate your wife's birthday?
Yeah.
And I had another group in that room that happened to be Asian as well.
Okay.
And here he is thinking that I'm segregating Asians into the back of the restaurant.
So he thought you put them next to the other Asian table?
But like...
That's funny.
Here I am serving 150 customers in an evening with 86 seats in a restaurant. And I have to flip. And the floor plan changes throughout the evening based on the pace that people are eating at.
And buddy, you don't even have reservations. You're lucky you're even eating.
Do you really think that I have the time to focus on segregating?
Yeah, on the race of the people coming in.
The race of the people coming in.
Where's he from, California?
I just want you to get a table.
Is he from California?
No, I think he's from Toronto.
Toronto? Okay, they're pretty woke too.
Yeah. So, I responded with humor, with a little bit of,
Sass.
Well, it seems we've got ourselves a storyteller extraordinaire. Your vivid narrative of sinister plot involving dining room segregation could rival the finest conspiracy theories. And you go on and you kind of...
Can you read the whole thing? That's good. That's pretty good writing.
Yeah.
I want to hear your response. And by the way, this is for those listening. This is something that business owners need to do this more often. The customer isn't always right, and sometimes customers will get out of hand, and it's okay to actually fight back and tell them to screw off sometimes, because it's warranted and it needs to be done sometimes.
You need to. And it's actually following this response that I've had customers come in and be like, are you the guy who answers
the reviews?
Like, fuck yeah. They're like, we came because of that.
There you go. So, can you read it?
Yeah. So, well, it seems we got ourselves a storyteller extraordinaire. Your vivid narrative of a sinister plot involving dining room segregation could rival the finest conspiracy theories. You had us on the edge of our seats, waiting for the aliens or the secret agents to make an appearance, but alas, it's just a case of mistaken lighting. Let's set the record straight. We're not in the business of racial profiling, nor are we covertly segregating our guests. Our seating arrangements are based on availability, not the Illuminati's grand plan, especially when seating 128 guests on an 86-seat floor plan, as we did on the night of the 13th of October, 2019. Did it ever occur to you that maybe the guests seated in the main dining room had simply taken the time to reserve a table? We don't know what is more upsetting, your heinous comment or the fact that you didn't plan a booking at a restaurant for your wife's 40th birthday. Now, here's a plot twist. We encourage open communication. If you had whispered your concerns to us, we'd have gladly sorted things out. Instead, you enjoyed your meal and chose to whip up conspiracy in hindsight. Should you ever decide to return, we would be more than happy to accommodate you. No secret handshakes required. Thanks for the entertaining tale.
I like that. That's good. That's good.
Yeah, you have to stay polite. You have to dose your anger in these situations. Yes. I usually tend to sit on the negative review for a few days, because if I answer right away, I get spiteful.
That's a good comment.
It gets I can get ugly, and I always have somebody else read me over, because sometimes
hey Phil, relax.
Yeah.
No, that's a really good tip, honestly, because it's like people, number one, if you're a business, you should be responding to reviews. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Number two, if you have bad reviews, you should probably look at yourself in the mirror or the business also more honestly,
because sometimes
they're
valid.
Yes, absolutely.
And you have to be able to recognize that you're in the wrong.
Yep.
You have to address the situation internally.
Yep.
Make sure it doesn't happen again.
Yep.
And I've contacted customers to apologize.
Yep.
For the situation, because it's not what you want.
Yep.
But when it's completely unwarranted, that's when I go off. And
I agree. Because we've had instances too, for some of them are just complete bullshit, and you're like, okay, this person's just a pain in the ass. But I'll always investigate as well. But like you just said, we've had instances where I went to go address the specific individual and I said, hey, what's this? And they go, yeah, that's my bad. And you're right. I'll say, okay, call the client back, speak to them. This needs to be fixed.
Definitely. And most of the times when you take the time to contact them,
they love it.
And they'll take the review off.
Yes.
You know?
Most of the time.
Most of the
and then
time.
sometimes you get like a real asshole. But
Yeah.
generally speaking, I find the people who are like complete assholes and refuse to take it off are usually, it's from an incident that wasn't that bad.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
That's usually the type of person that it is. I mean, how mad...
It's often it's situations that are completely out of your control.
Yeah.
You know, being seated to a loud group is the one that comes the most often. You know, like... Yeah. Yes, I can do my best to try and isolate people and to try and minimize those situations. And most times we manage to. But am I really going to refuse business just so that the decibel level is a bit lower that evening? Yeah. Just because I had to anticipate that you were going to be upset about that? Yeah. When in most cases people are understanding and people like the ambiance and the liveliness that it brings. And so, and
like, what are you supposed to say too? Like, are you going to walk up to a table and say, assuming it's within reason, but if you have a person or especially like a man with a deep voice who's just a loud talker, if the guy's a loud talker.
Well,
like,
there's ways of addressing the situation. Yeah. And for example,
like, how would you do that? Like, would you look at it first and kind of go, okay, these guys are actually being a little bit out of hand? Or
oh yeah. Okay. And I've done it before. You know, I've worn tables. Like, guys,
relax.
You're gonna need to take it down. You're gonna need to take it down a notch because, you know, at the end of the day, you're in a 4-diamond restaurant. You're in a 5-diamond restaurant. Yeah. You're not at La Cage au Sport or at Manoir watching a game. You know, so there is some sort of decorum that we expect. Yeah. But generally speaking, when people get out of hand, it's because they're too drunk. Mm-hmm. So then they don't want to hear it. Yeah. So then it's more a situation of isolating them as much as possible. But, at Tanière, it's the perfect example is we don't allow ourselves to be put in those types of situations. If you're more than 8, you need to buy out the restaurant.
Really?
Yeah. It's the rule. Because if you're more than 8, you could be the most well-intentioned. You're going to be too loud for the other guests that are around. Mm. And with the average ticket that we have, we can't afford anything to go wrong. And we can't afford any sort of disturbance. The couple's paying fucking $1,000 for their meal. It needs to be perfect. Yeah. And the last thing you want is an obnoxious group next to you being too loud.
So you guys not only have to control what you can control,
we have to control the uncontrollable.
Holy shit.
Oh yeah, that's a whole other cup of tea, definitely.
Because most restaurants are just they'll control. You can control the food, you can control the service, you can control the cost, obviously. But when customers are coming in, I would guess that's a lot more difficult to control than.
Yeah, it's the hardest part.
It's so touchy.
It is very touchy.
Because also too, because you can like spin it. If you're to go up to someone and they might say, "Well, I'm here spending $1,000. I'm going to do what I want to do." I feel like, have you ever had that type of interaction?
I had it last month.
Like, who the hell are you to tell me that I can't be doing this when I'm giving you $1,000 or whatever $500 it is?
Yeah, well, then you say, "Well, you didn't buy the restaurant. You didn't buy out the restaurant. If you wanted to be loud and obnoxious and occupy the whole space, I would have gladly taken a private booking, but it would have cost you $10,000, not $1,000.
Makes sense. What would you say is, because there's like the rule, there's like the 80-20 rule. So it's like 20% of your clients will take up 80% of your time. And it comes to satisfaction. It's impossible to make everybody happy. And I know, obviously, your response is going to be, well, we try and make everyone happy. But in a perfect world, in reality, that's just not possible. You can't make everyone happy. What percentage of clients would you say? Like, what number in your head are you actually happy with regards to customer satisfaction? Would that be like, if realistically speaking, 95% of the clients that came in had a 10 on 10 experience, I'd be happy with that. Is it 90? Is it 85? Did I explain that clearly?
Yeah. I feel like in our business model and in the context of what we do, we don't accept dissatisfaction.
So it's just 100.
We aim for 100 every time. And it shouldn't as much as it does, but it does take a toll on me when someone is unhappy and I know that they left unhappy. It lingers with me for days, and it's something that I have a hard time letting go of. And some business people, it's 10 feet over their head. There's no issue. It's part of doing business. And I also understand that it's part of doing business and that we can't be perfect. But to reach the goals that we have set out for ourselves, to be part of the conversation as one of the best tables in the world, you have to strive for perfection, and you have to strive for 100% satisfaction. So, no, I think if you were to rationalize and to allow yourself that window of, it's just part of the 2% that, you kind of allow yourself to cut corners or to not follow through and not, ensure to go that extra mile and make sure that everyone leaves happy. And, for example, the group that was too loud last month that I had to warn, regular customers of ours. And that's usually what happens is that they feel so comfortable because
they might become a little bit entitled.
Exactly. And I warned them twice throughout the evening. They were being too loud. And then after warning them twice, they're getting inebriated, and then now it's let's nag every single time that a staff member comes close to the table. They're going shh, like
that's kind of funny.
It's kind of funny, but when a couple next to them is paying $600-$700 for their meal, and every 3 minutes they hear shh from the group next to them, it's annoying, and it spoils everyone else's experience. So I kind of isolated the situation as best I could, dealt with them, got through the evening, spotted every single table that I knew had an issue with them that evening, called them the next day, sent gift certificates for them to come back and enjoy the experience. And several of them told me I was never going to come back to any of your restaurants. But because you took the time to call me and diffuse the situation and explain to me that this is a one-off and this isn't how it usually is, I'll gladly come back. We'll see you this summer.
Wow.
So
that's excellent, dude. That's fucking customer service A1.
Yeah, but it's at the end of the day, you got to put yourself in their shoes.
I get it. Yeah, I get it.
And me first, I enjoy going to restaurants more than anybody. It's what I do for a living.
Yeah.
And how those types of situations are managed will have a huge impression on if I come back or not. Yeah. Because if anybody's understanding of an obnoxious customer next to me or a waiter making a mistake or, when I was first starting in this industry and I was aiming to be the best and wanting to excel, I tend to be a stickler for those details and I would be anal about it and I would see things negatively and, it would just, generate this whole negative spiral that would, really influence my opinion on a place. Whereas now that I've worn the owner's shoes and I've seen all the aspects and all the work that goes into operating a restaurant, I'm a lot more understanding. Mm-hmm. And I'm more of a judge of how people handle situations and how follow-ups are made and the different interactions that are had with management or with the server that's taking care of you. They'll have a lot bigger influence on my opinion of the place. And I'll definitely want to give them another chance if they handled the bad situation properly.
I think it's just like acknowledging the fact also too, like that really is above and beyond. But if you have a good restaurant, I would go back to a restaurant if someone called me back and said, hey man, I'm sure last night you came in, there was a group really loud to you. I did my best to do it, but I apologize for the bad experience.
Yeah.
And here's a gift certificate. What can you say to that? I bet you every one of them are going to come back.
Well, that's the hope. That's the idea.
I bet you they will.
Hopefully.
I bet you they will. Yeah, I bet you they will. How hard, I want to switch gears. How hard is it, and I want to talk about the business side of the restaurant. How hard is it to actually run a restaurant so not only to run it and make the food, but when it comes down to like the money side of things too. So obviously, like making money, you have to run lean. Because I feel like for a restaurant, and again, this is why I never got into the restaurant industry. No offense, I would never get into the restaurant industry, just because it's so like.
I definitely.
I work in insurance. It's as stable as can come. I can see my numbers for like the next year. It's all more or less. There's like a range for insurance. It's very consistent.
Yeah.
It's very conservative. Whenever I think about a restaurant, it's this, because number one, you want to offer the best experience, the best service possible. And therefore, you can't be understaffed, because then it could take, for example, slower to get the food. Mm-hmm. It could take longer for the busboy to clean up the plates, et cetera, et cetera. But you also don't want to be overstaffed, because then from the business side of things, if your overhead is too expensive and you're paying too much in salaries, well, you as a restaurant can make a profit. So how do you balance things like that? How do you balance making a profit? How do you balance the business side of things in conjunction with the experience side of things?
It's so hard.
I'm sure
it's so hard.
Let's get into this. Yeah. I'm sure it is.
Honestly,
man. I'm sure it is.
It's a daily.
So it's not a rumor that running a restaurant is so damn hard.
Oh no,
it's not a rumor. Right?
Unless you're really passionate about it and you're.
Don't do it.
Don't do it. And like
let's get into the details. So yeah, like what's the actual, like what's the hardest part?
Well, the hardest part is definitely human resources. It's managing your staff. It's making sure that people are happy, because you took the example of the where is the line between offering a quality of service
and being overstaffed.
Yeah. If you're overstaffed, it's not only the restaurant that isn't profitable. Your staff makes less money.
Yeah.
Because they're more splitting the pie.
Yeah.
So, my issue now that I've delegated and I have managers on the floor is more for them to not be too cavalier in how they cut and in how they manage the amount of people that are on the floor, so that there's no hindrance to the quality of the experience, but they still make money. It's really about knowing your people on an individual basis, knowing their strengths, their weaknesses, placing the right people with the right people, compensating for certain weaknesses and certain strengths. And every night is different, right? It could be as simple as, when are people showing up? Doing 30 customers, but they're all between 6:45 and 7:15.
I hate that.
Versus doing 30 customers, first table's at 5, last table's at 9, and you get a table every half hour.
Yeah,
doesn't require the same amount of staff, but sometimes, the sales will be better.
Yeah.
On a night where they're super spread, you're less staff, but the way the pacing is, people have time to take care of them. Whereas
I used to get so stressed, like whenever, because the Yield Orchard at working as a waiter, that was like the first, I really enjoyed it. That was the first job I ever took seriously.
Yeah.
Like I never took any other job. I was like, I'm a teenager, who cares, right? Yeah. So I know I'm not going to be there in 6 months. That was the first job. I'm like, the harder I work, the more serious I take this, the more money I'll make. And I was just learning stuff. I liked it.
Yeah.
And I used to hate getting tables of like 30, because it's all like at once, and they're like, hey, where's my food? Hey, where's my drink? Hey, and there's only so much one person can do. It would stress me out. And you're absolutely right. I would much rather have any day of the week, have those 30 people not come all in at once or over half an hour, but spread out over 3 hours.
Yeah.
It's way less stress. I'll probably make more money. It's better experience for them. But we can't always have that.
No, you can very rarely have that.
Yeah.
Because generally speaking, when do people want to eat? 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
It's the
Pile
7 hours every time.
Yeah.
And we're happy now that we have tools that help us modulate these things.
Okay.
For example, our reservation system, you can set a maximum limit per 15 minutes.
Nice.
That people can book online.
Do you use Open Table?
I use Libro.
Okay, no, Libro.
So it's a Quebec-based company that started in Quebec, but now they've grown. They're pretty international now. Always been the more affordable option. Product does the job super well. Des gars de chez nous,
Are they from Montreal?
From Quebec City.
They're from Quebec
City.
City.
But they branched out of Montreal as well.
Okay.
They have offices in both. And,
okay.
Yeah, so whenever we can, we try and encourage local as much as possible.
Yeah, Open Table, they're American, I guess. Open Table,
I believe so.
Yeah,
but they also charge outrageous fees.
Is it
like a fee per reservation?
It's like, gross.
The fuck.
Yeah,
you know, like our margins are thin enough already.
Yeah, yeah. Is there like a specific like? Do you ever talk about like EBITDA margins with like? Do you guys ever focus on that, or is it more because you have like the actual margins on the food, and then I'm talking EBITDAs. It's like earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. So it's basically like the margin as a whole. Is there anything you guys like aim for, or you don't talk about that with the?
Well, it depends on which department. You know,
like just the company as a whole. So let's say, for example, you guys are making, I don't know, let's just say call it 5 million in annual sales. So they'd be like, okay, we want to have, example, 20% EBITDA. I want $1 million in profit before taxes. Do you guys do something like that, or?
We aspire to get $1 million in profit before tax on 5 mil, 20% profit margin. Very, very, very few restaurants manage to do that. Obviously, with the size of the project that we put forward, we're servicing a lot of debt. But if you count that aspect, you know, we're lucky if we can get 10 to 12% profit margins. And then the average in the industry is 2 to 6. So
for such a high risk industry,
long hours, you know.
You're confirming I'll definitely never go to the restaurant
It's
industry.
when you add it all up, it's really discouraging. You know,
I'm sure
you're kind of just like, why the hell did I do this?
Yeah.
But you know, a lot of gratification, a lot of feedback from the customers that fuels us.
Yeah.
We get to live a lifestyle that's opposed to most industries, but it kind of creates our own little ecosystem within the industry where we have opportunities to taste and see and touch and feel and discover products that most people don't even know about. No, it's definitely a passion-fueled industry, but you know, profit margins are so thin. You say roughly a third of your expenses is in staff, roughly a third of your expenses is in food costs and liquor cost, and then you have to try and make the rest of the last third work. You know. So,
are you guys experiencing right now? So, with regards to the food costs, are you guys feeling it too? Because a lot of restaurants, we insure a lot of restaurants at our office here, and a lot of them are speaking to them are saying, just like the average consumer, life in Canada is very expensive right now, and they're like, we're having a lot of trouble passing those costs on to the consumer. So, like, we don't want to scare away our clientele. And a lot of times they're eating. So in an industry that's already razor thin with regards to margins, they're becoming even thinner because they want to keep their clientele. They don't want to scare them away. So are you guys experiencing the same thing with regards to food costs? So example, like today to buy, I don't know, all your food, would it be 10% more than what it was 2 years ago? 30% more, 20% more? Because again, everyone can say the same thing. Going to a restaurant today, like
2 years ago?
Let's even say 2 years ago, even pre-COVID, like it's
more than that.
Like how much are costs up?
A lot of things have doubled in cost.
Doubled.
Yeah, a lot of things have doubled, if not more.
In 2 years.
Yeah,
that's insane.
Yeah, it's retarded. And we've obviously raised prices of our menus, but not proportionally.
Wow.
So it definitely hurts the bottom line, and we're part of a tier of the industry that like the menu at La Tanière is $235 per person. Just for the food. Like we have the most expensive menu in the city.
And even at that, the
margins are razor thin.
Because you got to pay a chef that has the skills to make the dish.
Yeah, well, we have 15 cooks.
Oh my God.
Every night to serve 65 customers, and 15 staff on the floor. There's an employee for every 2 customers. So that's the level that we want to be putting out. But we have to charge what we charge.
Yeah, of course.
But often we get the comment from local clientele that it's too expensive, but you get New Yorkers And they're like, this is freaking pennies.
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
you
yeah,
guys should be charging twice as much.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot more money in New York, and also too the exchange rate.
Yeah, but even like exclude the exchange rate, just the quality of the experience versus the price paid. Even in Europe, you know, like they charge quite a bit more, and if not double, if not 3 times as much for the same offering. But we can't afford to because our local clientele would just stop coming.
Would they?
I feel like a good amount of them would, or they'd come a lot less often. And there's a bit of
I'm going to give it a little analogy here, and this is what a lot of insurance companies do. And by a lot, I mean all of them. So they study this data, and so basically they go, okay, do you ever notice it's like your Videotron bill, just like your internet bill, the car insurance? Let's go with car insurance because everyone has it.
Yeah.
So it goes up. You're like, what the hell happened, man? My car is the same car. I have no tickets. I have no claims. Why did my insurance go up 30%? It happens, right?
Yeah.
So it happens to everyone. The insurance companies know. So let's say you have $1 million in collected premium, and they study all this data. They have actuaries like study this. They know that if they increase their premiums by, let's say, 20%. Okay, so now that $1 million, if everyone renews, which they never do, but let's just say everyone renews, now they have 1.2 million for the same amount of clients. Okay, so let's just say a pile of them cancel their insurance because they find insurance elsewhere. Yeah. And some people never even bother to shop. They just renew it anyways because they don't know. So if you have a million, now you're back to having $1 million, but you have fewer clients. So you're still collecting the same amount of money, but you have fewer clients to service, and your chances of paying out a claim drop because now you have fewer clients. Yeah. So that the law of averages over time is basically you're collecting the same amount of money, but you're having less clients. So the point I'm just trying to make is, I'm not saying you should do this or shouldn't do this.
Oh, but we do it naturally.
I'm just saying it's like sometimes businesses, they're reluctant to put their prices up, and yes, you will lose some of the clients, but you'll have fewer clients, but still collect the same amount of revenue. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's like I don't know. I feel
I agree that within reason it's necessary.
Of course, yeah, of course.
But we're already at the top of the bracket, you know.
Okay.
So when we do choose to increase, it's about navigating this fine line where you're not getting bad reviews.
You don't want
because
too much
the value isn't there.
Yeah.
It's all about perception of value.
Yeah.
And with the lengthy experiences that we offer, the prestige of the ingredients, the wines that are served and whatnot, you know, it's objective at the end of the day. And you know, I kind of find that oftentimes people who will recognize the value and commend you on your pricing and are willing to pay more are the ones that are international, and it's unfortunately the local clientele that
matter the most,
shopping for the deal, and they're the ones that matter the most because they're the ones that repeat the most. They're the ones that are in proximity of the restaurant, so you have to cater to them no matter how bad you want to push them aside.
I guess the point I'm just trying to say is, and you obviously, and I'm not trying to tell you how to run your business, obviously, and you know your business better than I know your business. I guess what I'm trying to say is, a lot of businesses, and I understand, it makes sense, they're afraid to like try it and put the prices up because of the fear that you might lose too much clients, and like, well, I don't want to bother them, and you might bother some clients, but I guess the point I'm trying to say is maybe you won't.
Oh yeah,
and now all of a sudden, like everyone keeps coming, they complain for 2 weeks, but everyone still shows up, you still have a waiting list, and your sales went up by 10% because you put your price up, and now you're making 10% more money, and you can use it to do other things. I guess that's the point I'm trying to say.
Oh yeah, and I think it's about timing too.
Yes, and like right now, are you guys feeling it? Like, because the economy, you know, people are hurting right now. The economy, I would say. Definitely. Are you guys starting to see like a reservation slowing down, or I guess because you're tapping into that upper niche, anyways? They're like, rich people are going to stay rich. Is that kind of the situation?
Especially at Tanière. It's less affected by fluctuations.
Yeah.
At Origine, we feel it a little bit more.
Okay.
But even Origine is in the upper echelon.
Got it.
It's 6-course tasting menus. Average check can go from $125 a head to $200 a head, depending on. So
it's still not cheap.
Evening. It's still not cheap. Yeah. But it's. I guess we definitely feel it, and we feel echoes from other restaurateurs as well. But it's to come back to your analogy of price raising. Yeah, we're doing less customers, but the average check is higher. So projections are on pace nonetheless. And it's just, we would hope to be doing the same amount of customers with the higher average check.
Yeah, of course.
And see growth.
Course. Yeah, of course.
You kind of feel like you're stagnating, but the average check is going up.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. The formula is tough to figure out, and it's ever changing, and you're always searching for that sweet spot, and sometimes you're not charging enough. Sometimes when you increase, you feel like, and you're adjusting portion sizes, you're adjusting quantity, you're adjusting from the feedback that you're getting. Like every time we change the menu, because running a restaurant isn't difficult enough. We change the menu all the time. The first 2-3 weeks.
Just to add that last little tester.
Exactly.
Change it. How often do you change it?
Well, at Tanière, it's in constant evolution.
So it could be every 3 months. It could be once a year. It could be.
Yeah, well, there's so many courses that sometimes, all the canapés will change at once, and then we'll change 1 or 2 of the main courses, and then everything in the dessert vault will change. And Origine, it's a little bit more seasonal. 4 times a year.
Okay.
Everything will turn over, and the first 2-3 weeks of a menu change, you're always adjusting.
Mm-hmm.
Portion sizes, are they big enough? Are they not big enough for people managing to get through the whole tasting menu?
That's what my buddy Peter meant. Have you been to Lou's in the Pointe-Claire Village?
I have not.
They just opened up. Okay. My buddy Pete, same thing. So they opened up 4 months ago, and it's pretty new. Yeah. But they were going through all the same thing at the beginning. It took a bit of time of a bit of tweaking to get it right. Oh, yeah. Like at first the ceviche came out a little bland, went back again recently, completely updated.
Yeah.
That has that nice kick, nice taste to it. But it takes time to get it right. I'm sure.
Definitely. I'm fortunate to have business partners that are seasoned chefs that
I'm sure that helps.
Do a lot of R&D before,
okay.
And when things do finally make it to the table, they're 95% there in most cases, if not 100%. So there's not much adjusting to do. But generally speaking, it's more portion sizes. People need to feel like they're getting value for the money, but you also don't want to overcompensate and tank your sales because of it. If your portions are too big and they're only ordering 1 dish instead of 2.
Yeah. Especially
if
with meat.
check is going down.
Yeah, with the cost of meat and stuff like that. Yeah, because I'm sure real quick at the level you're at, let's say there was a miscalculation, you could be like, damn, the more plates we sell, the more money we lose. I'm sure that could happen, right?
That can definitely happen very quickly.
Yeah.
And it's also about fluctuating prices, especially when you're seasonal.
Yeah.
Like, for example, we're in snow crab season, but start of season, you're paying $9 a kilo. You get to the end of the season, it's freaking $25 a kilo.
Jesus.
You fixed your price for your menu
at
the start of the season. You got to know when to stop it before it's no longer profitable. So, a lot of moving parts. A lot of fluctuation.
Jeez. What's like your future plan for, where do you want to grow within the hospitality industry?
That's a good question. We're opening another place next month.
Okay. What's it called?
More of a cocktail bar.
Okay.
It's going to be called Vieux Carré.
Vieux Carré.
Yeah.
Cool.
Classic cocktail from New Orleans.
Nice.
It was created at the Carousel Bar in the Hotel Monteleone in the French Quarter.
Are they going to serve like crawfish too and stuff?
No, but
crawfish?
You look up the menu at the Carousel Bar and it's kind of light eats, bar food, brasserie style.
Yeah.
So we're gonna have that inspiration, but with our same usual local Quebec forward initiative behind it, and it's gonna be more cocktail forward. Definitely, want to try and be part of the conversation of Canada's 50 best bars.
Do you know Kevin Demers?
Of reputation, I've met him maybe once or twice.
Yeah, he was on the podcast.
I've been to Cold Room a couple of times.
Yeah.
El Pequeño as well.
Yeah.
I love what he does.
Yeah, he was on the podcast a couple months ago.
Okay.
But I know him so I played hockey growing up with his brother, Jason Demers. Jason just retired. Not a big deal. I played with an NHL hockey player. He just retired from the NHL 2 years ago, I think. So, but yeah, Kevin's a cool guy.
Oh yeah.
His dad was my coach growing up.
Okay.
Tough coach. Good tough. Very
good, tough,
excellent coach. Excellent coach, but tough, and it was great. He actually brought a lot of discipline.
Those are the best coaches.
Yeah.
Definitely.
It's a coach that you can't walk all over. They'll kick you in the ass when you need to be kicked in the ass, but they're able to motivate you. And he was always good at motivating our team.
Mobilization. That's a key aspect to managing.
I guess like you must be doing it all the time, because it's just like, can you ever sniff out, let's say for example, you see someone, and everyone's a little bit different. Some people respond to a kick in the ass. Some people respond to like, hey man, like, are you okay? Some people respond to whatever it may be. Do you, like, what's your management style?
I'm very passive.
Yeah? Like in what sense?
I sit back and watch how people behave and kind of just, give them a nudge.
So what if someone's doing a behavior that you don't like?
Well, generally speaking, behavior I don't like, I tend to intervene right away.
Okay.
On the spot, like, don't do that again type of situation, But you also have to learn how to be, understanding as well, that like some people do things without knowing that they're doing them,
Yeah. And you can recognize the two.
Yeah, right? I can recognize the two. And I also, from individual to individual, there's some people that you tell them once, they'll never do it again.
Yeah.
And there's some people that even after 5 years, I am repeating the same freaking thing week in, week out.
And you want to pull your hair out.
Yeah. But, everyone has pros and cons, and you kind of learn to live with everyone's sort of character and identity. But yeah, generally speaking, I'm big on letting people express themselves, on letting people be themselves at work. And I think that's one of our strengths in all of our restaurants, is that we let our staff's personalities shine through. It's not too rigid of a canvas or of a format. We have standards. We are sticklers for certain details, but certain details we'll let slide.
And you can be yourself.
And you can be yourself.
So you have like the let's call it the carré. So it's like, hey, this is what we expect, and then kind of the things outside of there. If you want to have your own personality, we encourage you to do that.
Well, definitely. The last thing you want when you go to eat a restaurant is for service to be
dull,
robotic, or to be
good
repetition.
Yeah.
So everyone kind of has that liberty to bring their own color, but we insist that certain information be conveyed. We insist that certain standards of service be respected. I don't want to see fucking empty water glasses on the table. When you adjust the cutlery, now we have cutlery holders. It's idiot proof. Put it on the fucking cutlery holder. But got to give them the tools to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And once the tools are in place and it's communicated, I kind of just let people do their thing. And more often than not, you're not only satisfied with the result, but you're surprised, because when they see that you're giving them the tools and the culture is good, then they exceed expectations, and they push it even further. And they bring you to certain conclusions that you wouldn't have thought of yourself on your own. And that's kind of the whole teamwork makes the dream work in the restaurant. You are your team. You're nothing without them. And it's because of my staff that we've been able to get where we are today.
And I think it's also very important to convey that to employees, because at the end of the day, the business doesn't work without the employees, and the business doesn't work without the owners too, but they're both like integral parts. You need to have the leadership and the vision coming from the top, and you need to basically have the employees to put their best foot forward, to apply themselves, to kind of carry out or help carry out that vision that you're trying to project with regards to the service and with regards to like the experience you're trying to give. So
need to be present.
Yes, that too. I never understand, and I think most restaurants that don't have like the real leadership or the owner or like just that, it doesn't necessarily have to be the owner, but that leader who's passionate, they usually go downhill very quickly. You could say that about any business. And there have been other businesses too, where if there's not the person, there's always like one or two, there's always a group, a small nucleus of people that are the drivers of the business. Mm-hmm. And if all of a sudden they leave, the business usually, generally speaking, kind of starts to fail.
Yeah. No,
because like people, they lose their motivation. They're like, what am I working for? Well, I was speaking to one of my buddies. He's working at a company. He hasn't been working there for long. And I'm like, what's the vision of the company? He's like, I don't know. I'm like, well, that's kind of an issue.
Yeah.
And like, what are the values? I don't know. Where's the owner? He's like 70. He comes in once a week. I'm like,
yeah.
So I'm like, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's just, you got to know where you're working. And he thought he was joining a place that was going to be, driving. He was going to have upward mobility. And he's like, it's just not. I have no upward mobility. Or maybe I do, but it's not being communicated to me properly. So, and owners need to understand that and kind of say that message.
Yeah. Well, it's about caring. It's mostly
that too.
At the end of the day, had I joined the restaurant industry just to make money, I wouldn't have gone into the restaurant industry.
No. we just
like not at all. And you say, where do I see myself in hospitality 10 years from now? I honestly couldn't tell you. I want our current business model to continue to prosper. I think we want to eventually reach the benchmarks that we had set out to reach, be part of the conversation, to be one of the best tables in the world. But once you get there, you kind of just like, well, what do I do now?
Move to Jamaica.
Move to Jamaica. Believe it or not, that's the type of situation that I could see for myself. Maybe not Jamaica, but maybe consolidating and just opening a small 20-seater.
Like island life, just kind of
just relax.
That would be
on
a cool
the beach
life,
somewhere.
Man. Yeah.
Because you put on that pressure to perform at the top tier of the industry for so many years. At a certain point, you become hypersensitive, and it weighs you down. Like I don't react to stress nearly as well as I used to.
In a bad way?
In a bad way.
Yeah, me too.
It
and we're not
taxes me.
And we're not even old, man.
No, I know, but I feel old. I feel old.
Dude, it's like this. I feel the same thing. Like especially lately, they're just saying, without going into detail, it's just like problem after problem after problem after problem after problem. And you're like, oh my god, like when's this gonna stop? And the clients are up your ass.
Well, that's the thing is
holy shit.
I feel now that I can't be as client facing as I used to be.
Yeah. Because
I just no longer have the patience for it.
I made that mistake and we had to go through, and it's getting fixed and we're getting there. But like I'm still running the business. We're going through some changes, and at the same time I had to take on a big pile of books. So I'm client facing and trying to run the other side. It's burning me out.
Yeah.
I haven't felt like this. I love my job. I've hated my job for the past 2 months. And that's not good. You
no,
need to
it
fix
isn't.
something.
It isn't. Definitely recalibrate.
Yeah,
it's definitely a necessity, and being a business owner, that's part of the game. You have to be able to recalibrate. We had to recalibrate 6, 7, 8 times since we opened, because on top of that, we had a freaking pandemic through all of it.
Yeah, that's a curveball.
That was quite the curveball.
I'm sure. Is there anything you want to say before we finish up here?
Thanks for having me.
I appreciate it, man.
It was fun catching up.
Yeah, this was a cool. That was a great conversation. We've never had we've always been kind of like we've talked to each other.
Yeah.
We've never had an in-depth conversation about stuff.
Definitely.
It was nice, really nice catching up.
Absolutely.
So the name of the restaurant. Tell us what you want the people to know.
If you're looking for ultra fine dining, come to Tanière
in Quebec City.
Yep. A little more casual, but still high quality. Lots of vegetarian, vegan options at Origine.
In the same
just
building.
Above, in the same building.
Okay.
Vieux Carré is going to be in the same building as well. We have a lot of
Perfect.
square footage. Origine, great patio in summer. We do brunches on Sundays if ever. Nice 4-course tasting menu for brunch.
I like that. Mimosas?
Pear mimosas.
Oh, damn. Okay.
Being Quebec forward in our concepts, no citrus, no olives, no chocolate, no vanilla, none of that grows around here. So we find fun alternatives to all that.
Cool.
And definitely a cool place to be, especially in summer.
I'm gonna come check it out next time I come to Quebec City, like 100%. I'm gonna be like, Phil, please. I'm coming to your place.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Thank you very much for joining us on our 50th episode.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. I didn't even know it was 50th until this guy told me. So yeah,
cool stuff.
Appreciate it, man.